Welcome to this episode of Unstoppable Force TV. Yet again, I've got an amazing guest. I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but I know we are going to touch on prosperity and how we need to look after one another differently to maybe the way we've done it in the past. My guest today is Chris, all the way from Chicago. Chris, welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Stu. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm so grateful to have an opportunity to be able to talk with you and your guests. A little bit about my background. Well, Stu, I'm an advocate for the value and importance of small business here in the United States and in the world. I think small businesses are the backbone of capitalism. I think working away from small businesses has been part of the reason why we have so much friction between people, because we don't talk to each other anymore. We don't have face-to-face communication anymore. And small businesses are really all about people. And so I grew up in a small business family. In fact, my father, Kurt, had a successful small business. And like many of them, it started by accident. He and his brother Ben were patching holes in Ben's driveway, and a neighbor stopped and said, "Hey, would you patch the holes in my driveway too?" Boom. B&C Paving Company was born, Ben and Kurt. Growing up, anytime school was out, my father would drag me to work. We'd start at 4 a.m. and go to Doris's Diner, where all the business owners started their day. And they'd all gather around a big table, and they'd be drinking coffee and talking about their families, the town, their businesses. Oh, and here in Chicago, of course, they'd be talking about how bad the Cubs were playing. It was just a given. Then it was off to work. And I did every job possible at that company as I was growing up. I mean, I did things like manning the traffic on busy city streets, to shoveling hot asphalt on literally sweltering summer days, to driving that big, huge steamroller. And yes, that's fun. People would stop all the time and say, "Hey, can I drive the steamroller?" No, but I can, and it's really fun. But interestingly, the most important job that I did while I was there was when we were done, we'd go in person, my father and I, and meet with the customer and say, "Thank you for your business." They always appreciated it. It actually became the most fun thing that I did at work, because the responses were always so great. The interaction was always such a positive experience. So for all you business owners out there, that's the number one easy lesson that you can do to improve your business immediately. Because if you're in a small business, it's all about the relationships. Number one thing you can do, say thank you to your customer. I know it sounds sort of quaint and old-fashioned, but I promise you it works. Anyways, the first year I came back from college, I noticed that my dad was treating me differently. Instead of telling me what to do, he'd ask me, "Hey, Chris, what do you think of this idea?" If your father was like mine, Stu, and I believe he was, that was actually a very big change in the world. And then at the end of the summer, as I was heading back to school, my dad pulls me aside and tells me something I had never heard before. "I love you, Chris." It still impacts me. It was only a few months later, Stu, on a crappy rainy day in November, that the phone rings. It's my mom, and she's sobbing. She's like, "Chris, come home. Your father's died." And just like that, your whole world changes. So I went home, and shortly after the funeral, the accountants at our house, going through all the papers that were on my dad's desk, when he was done, the whole family gathers around the kitchen table, waiting to hear what he has to say. He's looking at his hands when he murmurs, "There's no money. I'm sorry, but there's no money." What? I'm thinking to myself, how could that be? And then what are we going to do? It was then that I realized that my mom's sitting next to me, softly sobbing. Instinctively, I leaned over and pulled her tight and told her, Mom, I promise I'll take care of this. I'll make sure it'll be okay. Now, Stu, I kept that promise, and it was at times really difficult to do. But it was also one of the most important things I did as a man and a human in building a sense of character and purpose and identity, is taking care of another person and fulfilling that commitment to take care of that person. You, as a father, understand this strongly.
Yeah.
And that's how I came into the speaking business and the coaching business and the consulting business, because I want to help people keep those types of promises that they've made to themselves and to the ones they love.
I think, Matt, thank you for the story. And there are so many pieces to unpack in there. I'd like to start really at the end of your story, because the third critical step of being unstoppable is to determine our sacrifice. And when I stand on stage and tell my story begins with the minister saying, "You're the man of the family now." Yeah, the irony of the fact that the bloke that was meant to teach me to be a man of the family is in a box just in front of him. But you make that commitment that I'm going to make this work, whatever it takes. I am going to be the unstoppable one, or you're going to look after people. Determining that sacrifice, but then living that sacrifice, it's not easy, is it?
At times, it's really a challenge because there's so many other demands, both good and bad, um,
Mm-hmm.
that pull on your sense of self, on your time, on what you believe your priorities are. It's not always fun, but here's the thing: it is fun most of the time. And if you're looking at a responsibility as an obligation, it's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
tough row to hoe. You know, like most responsibilities or most commitments that you make, whether it's your health, whether it's your diet, whether it's your faith. It's the incremental, day in, day out, positive perspective that you place into that, that allows you to not only fulfill it, because if you take us, when, to be quite frank, I had no idea what level of commitment I was making at the time. It's sort of
Yeah.
like getting married. Most people, I know, for me, when I first got married, I had, or when I had children, even more so, you kind of think you understand what it's going to be. You kind of know it's going to change your life and be a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
responsibility, but you really don't have any idea. And I think maybe it's because if you did, you'd run away. Um,
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think they say, and I haven't confirmed this, but the Chinese words or the Chinese character for challenge and problem is the same. And that's really what you're saying. It's we can look at the world, and I know that you journal most mornings. We can look at the world through the eyes of gratitude, or we can look at the world through the eyes of it's a problem. And if we look at it, if we look at our tasks, what we've got ahead of us, as grateful for the challenge that we are stepping into, grateful for the opportunity to help, it it changes our energy, it changes our thinking, it changes our faith in where we're headed. But it doesn't just change us; it changes the people around about us, doesn't it?
very much so. Very much so. Leadership is not about talk. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about lectures. It's not about speeches. It's not about lessons. It's about behavior. Okay. Now, your thought and your beliefs lead into your behavior, and vice versa. Your behavior can lead into your thoughts and beliefs. I actually think in many times it's easier that way. Fake it till you make it, as they say here in the States at times. But it's what people see you do. It's how you interact with people that really leads the way. Words are,
Great. I think you've almost taken me back to the beginning of your story and the first hook that I grabbed. People who listen to this podcast, they heard me say before that you can't manage people. You lead people, you guide people, you put processes in place. That's the management side. But actually, when we are leading our team, our family, our friends, it is about a unique relationship that we build with every single person who we interact with. And I've been asked that on stage, and people have said, "Not everyone." I went, "Yeah, everyone."
everyone.
If you smile at someone in the street, if you smile at someone in the street, that is an act of leadership. If you use someone's name in the supermarket, that is an act of leadership. The depth we go to as it gets closer and closer to us is the important piece, which brings me back to what you spoke about at the beginning of your story. Small businesses are the heart of any economy. Small businesses, but that's often where there is no leadership. I'm going to say education, but there's no mentoring. They've just got to find their way. And then they're left challenged quite often. I know that didn't sound like it. That was a long question.
Uh, there's so many ways that we can build from this, and I'd love to be able to share some of the thoughts that immediately come to mind.
Go.
Thank you. So during the pandemic, which was not that long ago, when the various agencies and government, it's hard for me to say leaders, representatives,
Yes,
when they made a decision, an announcement, an imposition that certain organizations were deemed non-essential, that was literally a kick in the gut to me, because first of all, it was just so painfully insulting to so many people, understanding the sacrifices that they've put into their businesses, the risk that they've taken to create their businesses, the effort that they've put in, and the dreams that they have associated with their businesses. I know all of what that entails firsthand. And so to be told, you're non-essential and we're going to forget about you for a period of time to focus on the others, I knew immediately that there were going to be millions of people that were negatively impacted. And there were. And that really is what inspired me to become a leading advocate for the importance and value of small businesses, was that visceral reaction to, oh my gosh, you don't understand. And there was a time in this country, in our country, and in many places in Western civilization, in which the statement of small businesses are the backbone of this country.
Yeah.
You don't hear that anymore. And I believe you don't hear that anymore because they don't have a seat at the table. They're not part of the moneyed interests, so to speak. They're not working. They don't have the infrastructure to be able to create the type of lobbying efforts that are required in today's representative government to have an impact and voice. So in the speeches that I give to small business owners, associations, organizations that are looking to create relationships with small businesses, I've been speaking actually with a lot of law firms that are, how do I keep and maintain my small business clients? By reflecting to them that you know more about them than just the law, by letting your small business clients understand that you care about not just whether or not their documents are properly in place, but that you care about them as owners, individuals, people, families, entrepreneurs.
I think I laugh, I chuckle quite often. When we are, I attend business events and I look at what workshops business events have, or business organizations have, and I have these conversations with the same groups. Your small businesses go and seek advice from their lawyers, from their accountants. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if you're seeking advice about the law or accounting. But if you're a small business who you've been doing the same thing, going round and round in circles, and your revenue's not improving, everything looks the same year on year, it's because you're taking the advice from the wrong place. These people are there to keep you safe, to keep you inside the rules and the regulations. And I'm not for a minute saying break the rules and regulations, but to become unstoppable, we've actually got to reach outside of the norm, and that means, again, building relationships with people and finding the way through the challenge that will work for that person, rather than the law says this, the rules say that.
You're so right, Stu, on so many different levels. I like how you point out that you get advice, that you get insight from those that have experience, and you get the insight and experience that they have expertise in. I have a coach for so many different things. I have a coach for training, for working out. I take my health very seriously. I have a coach for nutrition. I have a coach for my business. I go to therapy because I like to talk about how to improve the relationships in my life. And that's what my therapist and I work on. I work with a business coach on how to improve my referrals. How, you know, I have another story that I like to tell when I give speeches, and it's
Can I
about.
just, before I want to hear the story, I just want to just circle back to what you've said, because we're two blokes talking about reaching out for help,
Oh
and
yes.
that's something that we weren't taught to do as youngsters. It was
Oh
it was
no.
it was that stoicism of just wipe away your tears, get on with it.
Man up.
We've got to this stage now that there's two blokes sitting in two different countries, and we are able to talk openly about the fact that we need help to get better. And that's a mate. You have to come on the podcast again, because that's a whole nother podcast that we need to do. But I just it's important to actually make that statement that it's all right to ask for help. It's all right to
How
listen
could you
to
not? How could you not in today's world? Because there's so much good information available. Sure, there's all of the fake news and all of the misinformation and the scammers and this and that. But just take education and podcasts. I listen
yeah.
to a podcast every single time that I work out, when I'm running or biking. Um, it's it's an advanced education and understanding any topic that you want. The level of information and educational tools that are available to you are incredible. And I received my MBA in finance and economics from Northwestern University, one of the finest universities in the world. And I appreciate that education. But would I go back to that institution for advanced additional learning today? Not in a second. All
Mm-hmm.
that university did was provide me with credibility. They did a filtering system for employers. They taught me how to learn, how to understand a lot of difficult information on very brief periods of time. And they were a great networking association.
Mm-hmm.
So they have their value. But if you want to continue your learning process, and if you're going to be successful in today's world, you need to continue your learning process. Podcasts like this and so many others, books, are so valuable. I started speed reading so that I could read more books. I read at least one book a week. And guess where I learned how to speed read? From a class that I signed up from a podcast.
Again, and again, we will get to your story, but one thing that learning to think using our analytical brain would actually deal with an awful lot of the stories, the negativity, the fake news that's out there. Because all you've got to do is go and do your own analysis. Any document that we read, any social media we watch or listen to, should be the start point of analysis, not the end point of analysis.
If you're taking the news for face value from any perspective, you're lazy and uninformed. I mean, really. It's really about thinking through. And as the old saying goes, follow the money. Who benefits? Why is this piece of news available to you at this point in time? Because it's all placed. And I'm not saying that it's right, wrong, good, bad, disinformation, real information. There's a purpose behind it being publicized to the public. So take a step back and think, do the work. I think, and that's okay. Thinking is a learned skill that differentiates us from actually so many others. I find that talking to people that are thinking that, again, right, left, center, it doesn't matter. It's a matter of how did you get to that perspective? And please don't tell me that you read it in the New York Times, because I'm like, that's just too lazy for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to the story.
Right. Anyway, love that. Love that we just go down that little rabbit hole that we could have continued down, but I know you've got a hard stop. So you've got a story, and then we have got to even just a little bit talk about your book before we finish up. So I've poken up there to remind you we're going to do that. But you were
thank you so very much. The story is about relationships. You had mentioned and pointed out that relationships are so fundamental to your success in life, in business, in family. It's all relationship driven. And so referrals, particularly if you're a small businessman, so many people spend money on marketing and advertising. And I think they believe, rightfully so in many cases, that they're not getting the proper bang for their buck. They spend all this money in placements and they're like, I'm just not getting the customer flow that I'm looking for. And I'd like to suggest you take a step back and learn how to build your business through relationships and referrals. Okay. It's from the person when I went and with my father to say, thank you for your business. He got 80% of his business from sitting around that morning table with all the other business owners at Doris's Diner, because they knew each other, they helped each other, and that's what I'm advocating for all of us small business owners. Help each other. We are the only ones that care about each other. Okay? Mm-hmm. No one's going to come save us. The government's not going to save us. Google's not going to save us. Facebook's not going to save us. ChatGPT is not going to save us. Yep. We are the ones that need to do the work to enhance our businesses and our brothers and sisters' businesses. Okay? Totally. So rather than investing in the new technology, I remember my father investing in his new technology at the time, and he put a lot of time and effort and focus on exactly how to leverage advertising at that point in time, which was the cutting edge advertising of his decade. It was called the Yellow Pages.
Yeah.
But even though he had a Yellow Page ad, even though he used the other greatest technology at the time, which was uh, uh, an answering machine to make sure you get all the phone messages,
Mm-hmm.
80% of his business came from referrals. So
Yeah.
that's the story I wanted to say, is that there's always new technology. Focus on the tried and true. People are your business.
Well, we are, yeah, as I talk about in the Being Unstoppable workshop, we are herd animals. We need other human beings around about us. The story, that is the power of story. It was the power of story that brought us towards one another's campfires, and those campfires, did exactly what you've just described. Brought people together who could operate and work together for the good and benefit of that tribe, that community. That hasn't changed. That will never change for as long as us human beings are on the planet. And we forget about it because it's that next new thing. So always a great reminder. Right, tell me about. I love this. This was real, and thank you so much for my copy. Prosperity loop, because this actually comes back to the importance of recognizing that human beings operate in tribes, doesn't it? I mean, that's a
It
very,
does.
very short version of the book, but tell
So
me
the
about it.
prosperity loop was created during the pandemic when I had this visceral reaction to small businesses being closed. Um, I I didn't know what to do with myself. I had been retired for a number of years already. I'd worked an extensive and successful career in New York City, and had retired to Breckenridge, Colorado. Um,
Mhm.
and to be quite frank, even though, and I know people love retirement, and I personally believe that it's way overranked because
Mhm.
I lived in a beautiful mountain town. I skied over 100 days a year. I played golf almost every day during the summer. I hiked and was in the mountains and loved it. And as a friend of mine, a Canadian friend of mine, she's witty, I'd see her about every other year. And she'd say, "You need to get thinking again. You're getting dumber by the year."
Mhm.
And she's right. Engaging our thoughts, engaging our mind, engaging our learning, engaging with others allows us to enjoy retirement. I
Mhm.
found that just doing, you know, a friend of mine who still lives in Breckenridge, he says that it takes him longer and longer to do less and less. Um,
Yep.
and that's fine if that's what you want. But for me, I'm 65 years old now. I have a whole nother career in me that is guided by my desire to help others. And I
Yeah.
can't be
You're
more
only
excited about
you're
it.
only, you're only about halfway through 65. Plenty
In
time.
today's world, I have so much to do and so much
Yeah.
fun to have, and it's just been great. So the prosperity loop came from being locked in during the pandemic and saying, I need to express these thoughts. And
Mhm.
so I started talking about, what did I learn about businesses? What actually helps small businesses survive? And it really came down to relationships. I have 6 different steps in regards to how business owners can have a prosperous environment for themselves, for their
Mhm.
community, for their vendors, for their employees. How do you pull that in together into a systemic environment that creates a prosperous world for all? And that's really what the book is about. So it's available on all of the major bookshops. You can what again? I'm a believer in supporting small businesses. So I go to some of the websites of some of the larger booksellers,
Yeah.
identify the book that I want to buy, go to the local bookshop because they do not compete on
Mhm.
inventory. They compete on service. They compete on relationships. They compete on contributing to the community. I send a link to my local bookshop owner and say, please buy me this book. And then when I come back in town, he has my credit card. I pick up my 3, 4 books that I had ordered a away,
Yeah.
and I get to have them. That's just one example of making sure that people are at the forefront. Because, okay, I'm going to do
Go
something
on.
and take a risk and say Jeff Bezos does not care about me.
Okay.
That ordering books through his system does not benefit me, my family, my community, the people that own the local bookshops, the coffee shops that are part of those bookshops, all those other local entrepreneurs need our help. Nobody's going to help them except you and I.
Brilliant.
Make the commitment.
What a great way to wind this conversation up. You have a look at the Prosperity Loop, guys. It is a great read. It's a great refocus on everything that Chris and I have spoken to over the last 30 minutes. Again, it comes down to that relationship and realizing the importance of community around about us. Chris, thank you so much for your time on
Oh,
Unstoppable
real
Force
quick,
TV. Love
real
working
quick,
with you.
real
Go
quick.
on. We go on.
If you want to get hold of me, if you want to hire me for any services, particularly speaking services, I love public speaking. I'm good at public speaking. I'm inspiring public speaking. Please go to my website, www.get-looped.com. That's GET.
Totally, and Chris, we will make sure that that detail is in is in the blurb on social media and on the channel details on YouTube to make sure that people can reach out to you. Chris, it's been awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Stu. It was really a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you again.